I may be 94, but no striped demon will touch my granddaughter, old Akil roared, his hoarse voice tearing through the 70-Fundigan air as 1,300 pairs of hungry eyes glinted in the freezing darkness. His hatchet, once sharp, felt like a ton, his bones creaking under the relentless cold and the insane pressure of the battle against the relentless horde of Siberian tigers. He knew he was losing, that death would embrace him in seconds, when suddenly an unthinkable sound cut through the predator's howling and changed everyone's fate. The unthinkable sound that cut through the predator's howling was not a roar, nor a gunshot, but a strident, sharp chorus like 1,000 knives scraping the sky. Akil, his hatchet heavy in his trembling hands, raised his clouded gaze to the grey sky and saw a dark stain rapidly expanding, swallowing the little light that remained. It was not a cloud, but a legion. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of black ravens spiraled down, their sharp beaks and eyes gleaming like obsidian beads. They plunged onto the tiger horde with a fury that defied comprehension, a tornado of feathers and claws that transformed the battle into a supernatural chaos. The tigers, so confident and hungry before, retreated with growls of surprise and pain. The ravens did not attack to kill, but to torment, to blind, to disorient. They pecked at the eyes, ears, and sensitive muzzles of the big cats, flying in tight circles, their sharp cries echoing across the icy tundra. Akil watched, paralyzed by astonishment, his mouth agape, the cold forgotten for an instant before that sight. His muscles, previously rigid from tension and effort, relaxed for a moment, allowing him to feel the searing pain in his back and shoulders. But the pain was a whisper compared to the wonder unfolding before him. Naya, hidden behind the overturned sled, peeked out from between her crossed arms. Her eyes, once filled with terror, now gleamed with a mix of fear and fascination. She had never seen anything like it. Nature, which until then seemed to have turned its back on them, now manifested in such a wild and protective way. The tigers, confused and irritated, began to disperse. They were not used to being hunted, to being attacked by something so small and numerous. Their hunting tactics, their brute force, were useless against that storm of beaks and feathers. One by one, with frustrated growls and lowered tails, the big cats began to move away, disappearing into the icy mist from which they came. The silence that followed was almost as deafening as the tumult. The ravens, having completed their mission, ascended in a majestic formation, circling one last time over the village before disappearing into the winter sky. Akil felt his legs weaken. The hatchet fell from his hands with a dull thud in the snow. He took a deep breath, the icy air burning his lungs, and brought a wrinkled hand to his chest, feeling his heart pound. He slowly turned to Naya, who was now standing, her eyes still fixed on the spot where the ravens had vanished. "Naya," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion and exhaustion. The girl ran to him, hugging his legs tightly, her face hidden in his heavy garments. Akil hugged her back, feeling the fragility of life in his arms, the promise of a future that had almost been stolen from them. He closed his eyes, a warm tear tracing a path down his wrinkled face, mingling with the ice. It was a miracle, a gift from the spirits of Yakutia, an unexpected alliance that would never be forgotten. The village was saved, and his granddaughter, his last link to the future, was safe. Akil opened his eyes again, the weight of reality returning with the force of an avalanche. The surrounding snow, marked by tiger paw prints, was a vivid reminder of the danger. Naya still hugged him, her small body trembling. He held her close, feeling her warmth as a balm for his exhausted soul. "It's all right, my little ice flower," he murmured, his voice hoarse, stroking her dark hair. "The spirits protected us." With an effort that seemed to move mountains, Akil stood up. Feeling the weight of each of his 94 years, his knees cracked, his back protested, but the urgency of taking Naya to safety propelled him. He picked up the fallen hatchet, wiping snow from its blade. The village, now silent, looked like a ghost under the sky that was beginning to lighten, tinged with pale hues. The first rays of sun revealed the disorder. Overturned sleds, scattered provisions, trampled snow. Miraculously, no houses or livestock had been harmed. As Akil and Naya walked back, the silence of the tundra was broken only by the crunch of snow under their boots. Naya, wide-eyed, looked at the gigantic tiger tracks, then at the sky as if searching for the ravens. "Grandpa, they saved us," she said, her voice small. Akil nodded, a lump in his throat. "Yes, Naya. Nature has its mysteries. We must always respect and honor it." As they approached the first cabins, doors began to open. Anxious, pale faces peered out, and then a cry of relief echoed. It was Anya, Akil's neighbor, with a vast heart. She ran to them, hugged Naya tightly, then Akil, tears streaming down her frozen cheeks. "Akil! Naya! We thought the worst," she sobbed. Soon, the small village square was filled with residents. Men, women, and children gathered, eyes fixed on Akil, the old hunter who had defied death. Respect and admiration were palpable, but there was also a shadow of concern. How would such a small, isolated village with scarce resources recover from a scare like that? The threat of the tigers, though miraculously averted, still hung in the air. Akil, feeling the weight of all those gazes, tried to maintain his composure, but exhaustion was overwhelming. He saw young Kyle, a strong hunter, approach with a grave expression. "Akil, what happened? How did you survive?" Kyle asked. Akil raised his wrinkled hand, pointing to the sky. "The ravens, Kyle, a legion of them. They fought for us." A murmur of astonishment ran through the crowd. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others looked at the sky with new reverence. Anya guided Akil and Naya into her cabin, where the fire crackled. She offered them hot tea and a nourishing broth. Naya snuggled near the fire, her eyes still wide with the memory of the night. Akil, seated, felt the pain in his bones, but also a strange peace. He had fulfilled his promise, but the peace was fragile. The village had been saved, but the memory of the 1,300 tigers and the uncertainty of the future were silent obstacles. The community needed strength of spirit to move forward. Akil, even at 94, knew his part was not over. Akil, with the hot tea in his wrinkled hands, felt the warmth. But the cold of uncertainty gnawed at his soul. Naya, asleep in Anya's lap, seemed an angel of peace. But the 1,300 hungry eyes of the tigers danced behind the old man's eyelids. He had fulfilled his promise to protect Naya, his last family, but the village needed more than survival. It needed hope, more solace for a spirit suffocated by terror. The next morning, the pale sun barely warmed the tundra, but smoke rose from the chimneys, a sign of life. The villagers gathered in the square, seeking answers, sharing their fear. Kyle, with worried eyes, called Akil. "Elder, we need to talk. What will we do? They might return." Akil felt the weight of leadership. He rose with a sigh, leaning on his hatchet, now a staff. He walked to the square, where tense faces awaited him. Children clung to their mothers, men murmured. The silence was heavy with apprehension. He raised his wrinkled hand. "My children, my family," he began, his voice hoarse but firm. "Last night showed us nature's fury, but also its mercy. The spirits of Yakutia sent us the ravens, proof that we are not alone, that there is a greater force protecting us." He paused, seeking to ignite faith. "Yes, the fear is real. The 1,300 tigers might return, but will we flee? Will we abandon our homes, our land?" An elderly woman shook her head. "No, Akil, this is our home." "Exactly," Akil replied, a faint smile appearing. "Our strength lies not just in our arms, but in our hearts, in our unity, our resilience. Our ancestors faced harsher winters, more terrible beasts. They taught us never to bow down. Kyle stepped forward. But how can we feel safe? With every shadow, every howl of the wind, we will think of them. Kyle nodded, understanding the fear. We cannot erase the memory, Kyle, but we can transform it. We will become stronger and more vigilant. We will reinforce palisades, organize watches. Above all, we will remember the miracle. We will tell the story of the ravens to our children so they know that hope never dies in the darkness of the Yakutian winter. He looked at Naya, who was watching from Anya's doorway. The girl, with her innocence and courage, was a living symbol of what they had protected. Kyle felt renewed energy. It's not just about surviving, but about flourishing and honoring the present. We will hunt with wisdom, care for our livestock with attention, laugh louder, sing stronger, warm each other with our unbreakable spirit. Anya, beside Naya, smiled, a tear tracing her cheek. The faces in the crowd softened, the tension eased, replaced by determination. Kyle did not promise that the danger would disappear, but that they would face it together, with the wisdom of the ancients and renewed faith. He had planted a seed of courage. It was up to everyone to water it. Kyle's part was to be the beacon, keeping his flame lit for others. Kyle, the beacon, felt the weight of responsibility burn in his chest like the fire he lit every morning. The flame he needed to keep lit for others was not just one of optimism, but of action, of rebuilding. That afternoon, as the pale sun dipped over the icy mountains, he called the elders and younger hunters to a meeting in the communal cabin. The air was heavy, not only with cold, but with the recent memory of terror. Kyle, his brow furrowed, was the first to speak. Elder Akil, your words gave us strength, but the truth is, we are vulnerable. The palisades are old, and the tigers, 1,300 tigers. We've never seen such a thing. His eyes darted to the floor, the image of the predators still vivid. Akil nodded slowly, his own wrinkled eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. You are right, Kyle. Faith without works is vain. We need to protect ourselves, not just with spirit, but with our hands. He stood up, leaning on his hatchet, which now seemed an extension of his own body. Tomorrow, at the first sign of light, all able-bodied men and women will gather. We will reinforce the fences, build new barriers of ice and wood. The young, like you, Kyle, will lead the patrols, but with wisdom, not recklessness. The elders, like me, will guide with the experience of past winters. The women, with their inner strength, will organize provisions and care for the most vulnerable. He looked at Anya, who was sitting near the entrance, with Naya asleep in her lap, the girl's lips slightly parted. Anya nodded, a look of determination on her face. Kyle's voice, though tired, carried the unquestionable authority of one who had seen and survived countless winters. We cannot hide. Life in Yakutia demands courage, but it also demands unity. Each of us is an essential part of this body that is the village. If one arm weakens, the whole body suffers. He gestured with his wrinkled hand, encompassing everyone in the cabin. We need each of you. The task will be arduous, the cold will be relentless, but the reward will be the safety of our children, the continuity of our lineage. Naya, waking with a small sigh, opened her eyes and met Kyle's gaze. A tender, yet tired smile appeared on the old man's lips. The girl, still sleepy, extended a small hand to him. Kyle knelt with difficulty, taking her small hand and squeezing it gently. My ice flower, you were the reason we fight. You are our future. His voice softened, laden with a deep emotion that touched everyone in the room. Kyle, observing the scene, felt an unexpected warmth spread in his chest. Old Akil's vulnerability, The way he bent down to his granddaughter humanized his leadership. It was not just an order, but an appeal from the heart. "Elder Akil," Kyle said, his voice now firmer, "we will follow you. We will do whatever it takes." Others nodded, some murmuring words of support. The seed of courage planted by Akil began to sprout, not just in the form of faith, but in the promise of hard work and unity. The village, though still wounded, began to rise, ice brick by ice brick, under the wise and loving leadership of its elder. Hope was not a luxury, but a vital tool for survival. The sun barely touched the horizon with a pale, distant glow, but in the village, Akil's call already echoed. It was not a shout, but a murmur of voices spreading from cabin to cabin, waking the residents for the new day of work. Hope, which the night before seemed a fragile sprout, now demanded to be watered with everyone's sweat and effort. Akil, despite the pain gnawing at his bones, was one of the first to emerge, his hatchet serving as a support as he walked to the center of the village. His eyes, though tired, shone with a contagious determination. Kyle was already there, organizing the younger men. His voice, once hesitant, now carried a new firmness, a reflection of the trust Akil had placed in him. "Come on, brothers. The palisades won't build themselves." He pointed to the old wooden fences, some broken, others corroded by time and ice. The task was monumental, but the community's spirit seemed to have been awakened. Women like Anya joined in, not to carry heavy logs, but to organize tools, prepare hot drinks, and care for the children, ensuring no one was left helpless. Naya, with her curious eyes, watched everything from outside Anya's cabin, a small reindeer hide blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She saw Grandpa Akil, bent but unyielding, and felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mix of fear and pride. The 71°C cold bit at exposed skin, turning each breath into a cloud of vapor. Gloved hands barely felt the rough wood, muscles protested with every hammer blow. But no one stopped. Aguil, with his ancestral wisdom, supervised the work, pointing out the weakest points of the defenses, teaching his ancestors techniques for fitting logs and building stronger ice barriers. He could no longer lift heavy logs, but his mind was as sharp as his hatchet's blade in his hunting days. "With every barrier we raise, we also raise our courage," he said, his voice hoarse but audible over the creaking wood and the sound of tools. Anya, while serving hot tea, noticed the exhaustion on the men's faces, but also the unity that strengthened them. She saw Kale, his cheeks red from effort, helping an older man lift a log, and a gentle smile appeared on her lips. The village was wounded, yes, but not broken. The threat of the 1,300 tigers still hung like a cold shadow, a constant reminder of vulnerability. However, with each piece of wood fixed, each block of ice molded, each laugh shared between one blow and another, hope gained substance, becoming tangible. Naya, unable to stand still, approached Akil, who was leaning against a newly fixed stake, observing the progress. She touched his wrinkled hand. "Grandpa, are you tired?" Akil looked at her, his eyes softening. "A little, my ice flower. But tiredness is a small price for the safety of our family, of our village." He squeezed her small hand. "Each of us has a role, Naya. Yours is to remind us why we fight." The afternoon advanced, and the new palisades began to take shape, taller, more robust. The ice barriers, gleaming under the weak sun, looked like crystal walls. The work was slow and painful, but with each advance, the feeling of helplessness diminished. The village was not just defending itself, it was reaffirming itself, showing winter and its beasts that the Yakutian spirit would not be easily subdued. The connection between the residents, forged in adversity, grew stronger with each hammer blow, each word of encouragement. Akil watched, his heart filled with silent gratitude. They were building more than defenses, they were building a future. Akil watched, his heart filled with deep, silent gratitude. They were building more than defenses. They were building a future. The days were filled with hammering, sawing, and the creaking of wood. Tall, robust palisades rose like crystal and wooden sentinels against the white vastness. Ice barriers, polished by the wind, glittered, a testament to indomitable human resilience. Kyle, his hands calloused, his face marked by the cold, led the young hunters, his voice gaining authority that Akil shaped with ancestral wisdom. Anya and the women kept the fire burning, preparing meals and teas to warm body and spirit. Naya, more at ease, helped, her curious eyes absorbing the unity and hope. With the last log and ice block fixed, a different silence descended upon the village. It was not the silence of terror, but of exhaustion and uncertainty that settled in their hearts. The task was done, but the shadow of the 1,300 tigers still lingered, invisible in the icy air, a constant reminder of mortal fragility. Akil, sitting near the fire in Anya's cabin, felt the weight of his 94 years. The pain in his joints was constant, but the unease in the villagers' eyes worried him. That night, under the lamplight, a murmur spread like wind. It was Ilara, an older woman, mother of 3, who approached Akil with distress. Her eyes, once grateful, now carried worry. "Elder Akil," she began, her voice low, almost a whisper, "the defenses are strong, but what if they return? And what if the ravens don't come again? The miracle was a gift, but can we count on another?" Akil looked at her, and at the nodding faces their fears reflected. Ilara's unspoken question echoed everyone's vulnerability. Hope, fragile as ice, and fear, a weed, threatened to suffocate it. Kale, nearby, heard Ilara, and his expression hardened. "We cannot live with this constant fear. Our children deserve to grow up without the shadow of 1,000 tigers or nightly terror." He paused. "Perhaps we should go south, to larger villages with more protection and resources." A shiver ran through the cabin. Leaving the village, their ancestral land, was a sacrilege, a betrayal of memory. Kale's painful proposal echoed helplessness and uncertainty. Akil felt a tightening in his chest, a pain that did not come from tired bones. He had promised resilience and unity, but the community seemed threatened by new despair, a fissure in its soul. His eyes found Naya, who slept, oblivious to the emotional storm. Protecting his granddaughter meant securing her future, but in a strange land, far from her roots and essence. Akil closed his eyes, his face wrinkled in silent pain, a heavy burden. Yakutia was part of his soul. Leaving it would be tearing a piece of himself away. He saw the fear in Ilara and Kale and could not ignore the plea for safety. The village had faced the tigers, but now an insidious enemy, doubt, the loss of faith in home. It was a turning point not of external attack, but of an internal fissure that threatened to dismantle everything. Akil opened his eyes, his mind feverish. He needed to find words, a new purpose, to rekindle the flame of hope and permanence. The battle for the village's soul was just beginning. He raised his head, his wrinkled eyes scanning the apprehensive faces in the cabin. Ilara, Kale, Anya, all waited, their breath held. Kale's proposal, though born of fear and concern, was a slow poison that threatened to corrode the community's spirit. To leave Yakutia, their land, was like tearing a man's soul from him. "Go south?" Akil asked, his voice low but laden with a gravity that silenced any murmur. He stood up, his hatchet firmly planted on the ground, serving as an extension of his will. His eyes met Kale's, filled with deep sadness. "And what would we find there, my young one? Unknown houses, lands that do not know our ancestors. We would be like leaves scattered by the wind, without roots, without history." He gestured with his wrinkled hand, encompassing the cramped space of the cabin. "This land shaped us, Kale. Every stone, every frozen river, every tree twisted by winter. Our grandparents were born here, our parents hunted here, our children like Naya," he pointed to the sleeping girl, a soft smile on his lips, "deserve to know the same ground that saw us born and grow. They deserve to hear the stories of the spirits that inhabit these mountains, not those of a distant, strange place." Anya, who had approached, placed a hand on Kyle's shoulder, her eyes expressing the same pain Akil felt. "Akil is right, Kyle. How could we leave behind the memory of our loved ones, buried beneath this sacred snow? How could we abandon the place where the ravens, sent by the spirits, saved us?" Her voice trembled, but her conviction was strong. Akil continued, his voice gaining strength, not from anger, but from passion and conviction. "Fear is a winter within us, Kyle. It freezes courage, obscures vision. But the miracle we witnessed was not just a gift to save us from death. It was a reminder of our connection to this land, to the spirits that protect it. It was proof that Yakutia wants us here, that we are a part of it." He knelt with difficulty beside Naya, stroking her dark hair. "When Naya wakes, she will remember not just the terror, but her grandfather's strength, her village's unity, and the magic of the ravens. She will remember that this is her house, her home, and that here she will be safe, not because we fled, but because we fought for her." His eyes rose to the community. "We cannot build a life of fear. We need to build a life of purpose. Yes, the tigers may return, but we are also Yakutia. We are resilience incarnate. We are not prey, we are guardians." A heavy silence filled the cabin, but this time it was not the silence of despair, but of reflection. Kyle's words, simple and direct, penetrated their hearts, rekindling an almost extinguished flame. Kyle, his head bowed, slowly raised his eyes, meeting Akil's. There was a new light in them, no longer of fear, but of new-found determination. "Elder Akil," Kyle said, his voice choked, "you are right. This is our home. We are not going anywhere." A murmur of agreement spread. Ilara wiped away a tear, a trembling smile appearing on her lips. The fissure in the village's soul began to close, not by denying the danger, but by reaffirming its identity and purpose. Akil watched, feeling the warmth of unity fill the void left by fear. The battle for permanence had been won, at least for now. Now it was necessary to solidify that victory with actions that honored his words. He knew the path would be long, but they would not be alone. Akil watched, feeling the warmth of unity fill the void left by fear. The battle for permanence had been won, at least for now. Now it was necessary to solidify that victory with actions that honored his words, transforming newfound faith into something tangible that would nourish the village's soul. He knew the path would be long, but they would not be alone. The next morning, the still icy air of Yakutia carried a new purpose. Akil, leaning on his hatchet, once again summoned the villagers. His wrinkled eyes, once heavy with worry, now shone with a serene light. "My children," he began, his voice hoarse but firm, "we built walls of wood and ice to protect our bodies. Now we need to build walls of spirit to protect our hearts. I propose we celebrate the ceremony of the ravens, a festival of gratitude and unity, to honor the spirits that saved us and reaffirm our connection to this land." A murmur of acceptance ran through the crowd. Ilara, who had previously expressed the deepest fear, now smiled, her eyes moist. Kale, his brow furrowed in concentration, stepped forward. "Elder Akil, I and the young hunters will take charge of finding the finest wood for the bonfire and the softest furs for the seats. It will be an honor." His tone was one of respect and determination. Anya, beside Naya, who watched everything wide-eyed, nodded. "We, the women, will prepare the most nutritious foods and the warmest drinks, and we will weave colorful ribbons to adorn the square." In the days that followed were filled with a different energy. It was not the urgency of defense, but the joy of preparation. Men and women worked side by side, their calloused hands now not just fixing logs, but carving small wooden raven totems or weaving baskets for food. The children, led by Naya, who now seemed lighter and more smiling, collected dry branches for the bonfire, their laughter echoing across the tundra. Akil watched everything, a gentle smile on his lips. He saw the community heal, not just in actions, but in every gesture of cooperation, in every shared glance. Naya, with her small hand, helped Anya separate herbs for tea, her tiny fingers moving delicately. "Grandma Anya, will the ravens like our feast?" she asked, her childlike voice full of hope. Anya smiled, stroking the girl's hair. "They will feel the warmth of our hearts, my little one. That's what matters." In the square, Kyle, his cheeks red from the cold and effort, raised a richly decorated pole, and other young men helped him, their voices full of camaraderie. On the night of the ceremony, the village transformed. A bonfire crackled in the center of the square, its flames dancing against the dark sky, casting light and warmth upon the gathered faces. The palisades, once symbols of fear, were now adorned with colorful ribbons and small wooden ravens, transforming into a scene of celebration. The air was fragrant, with the smell of roasted meat and herbal tea. Akil, seated in a place of honor, raised his wrinkled hands. "Today, we do not celebrate the absence of danger, but the presence of our strength. We celebrate life, unity, and the wisdom of the spirits that guide us." Voices united in ancestral chants, the stories of the ravens and Yakutian resilience being told and retold. Naya, nestled beside Akil, her eyes fixed on the flames, felt the warmth of the bonfire, and, even more, the warmth of her family, of her village. Fear had not completely disappeared, but it was contained, replaced by a sense of belonging and hope. The village, united, would not only survive, but flourish, honoring the present and building a future. The bonfire of the ceremony of the ravens burned down to its last embers, but the warmth it ignited in the village's hearts remained. The next morning, a different silence hung in the air, not of exhaustion, but of newfound peace. The colorful ribbons still fluttered on the palisades, and the small wooden ravens seemed to observe with benevolence. Akil, emerging from his cabin, felt the cold bite less intensely. His eyes scanned the village, observing the first movements. Kyle was already up, organizing the young men for the morning patrol, now with a lighter smile. Anya and Ilara gathered near the communal fire, planning meals, their soft voices laden with renewed optimism. Naya, waking, ran to the window, her eyes searching for her grandfather. Seeing him, she waved her small hand, a gesture Akil returned with a tired but loving nod. The girl no longer seemed so frightened. The celebration had transformed fear into curiosity, terror into stories of courage. The following days were a testament to the strength the ceremony had instilled. Daily tasks, once heavy with the burden of fear, were now performed with new vigor. Kyle, with the authority Akil had cultivated in him, not only led patrols, but also organized hunting and fishing, ensuring food stocks were efficiently replenished. He frequently consulted with Akil, absorbing the elders' wisdom about animal patterns and weather signs. Anya and Ilara, along with the other women, transformed the communal cabin into a hub of activity where furs were sewn, clothes mended, and stories told. They created a rotation system to ensure all elders and children were well cared for, especially during the coldest nights. Human connection, once a tenuous thread, was now a strong web that enveloped everyone. However, Yakutia never allowed complete rest. A week after the ceremony of the ravens, a relentless snowstorm descended upon the village. It wasn't just the usual cold. It was a biting wind that howled like 1,000 hungry wolves, bringing with it a blizzard so dense one could barely see their own hand. Temperatures plummeted to extreme levels, threatening to freeze hope itself. The obstacle was not the tigers, but nature's own fury, testing the village's newfound resilience. The palisades, though reinforced, groaned under the wind's pressure. Firewood stocks, which had seemed abundant, began to dwindle rapidly with the need to keep fires burning day and night. Isolation became a palpable reality, and anxiety, like a cold shadow, tried to infiltrate their hearts again. Akil, sitting near the fire, observed the worried faces. He saw the tiredness in Kyle's eyes, who barely slept, ensuring the external defenses did not yield. He felt the tension in Anya, who tried to keep children warm and fed with limited resources. Naya, sensing the village's mood shift, snuggled closer to her grandfather, her small fingers clutching his wrinkled hand. Akil knew this was the true test. It wasn't the fight against a visible threat, but persistence against exhaustion, discouragement, and the silent fear that nature, in its relentless grandeur, could crush them. He needed more than words. He needed an act, a gesture that would reaffirm the promise of permanence. He stood up, his old hatchet serving as support. "We will not bow," he said, his voice hoarse but resonant. "This storm is just another winter, and we are the children of winter." Kyle, hearing Akil's words, felt a new surge of energy. "What will we do, Elder?" Akil looked at the fire, its flames dancing. "We need more firewood, and we cannot wait for the storm to pass. We need to go get it." A murmur of apprehension ran through the cabin. Going out in the blizzard was an immense risk. But Akil's eyes, though tired, shone with the same determination that had faced the tigers. Unity, faith, and courage would be tested again, not against beasts, but against the very icy heart of Yakutia. Unity, faith, and courage would be tested again, not against beasts, but against the very icy heart of Yakutia. Akil, his hatchet firmly gripped, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames, felt the weight of his 94 years, but also the inextinguishable flame of his spirit. "There's no time to lose," he declared, his hoarse voice overcoming the howl of the wind that penetrated the cabin's cracks. "The fire is the heart of our village. Without it, the cold will consume us." Kyle stepped forward, his expression marked by concern. "Elder Akil, the blizzard is merciless. It's a danger that not even the youngest hunters would dare face alone. Allow me to lead a group. Your wisdom is more valuable here." Akil shook his head slowly. "My wisdom tells me that a leader does not hide when the flock is in danger, and my experience tells me where to find the wood that withstands this fury. I will not go alone, but I am the one who knows the safest path, the natural shelters that can save us from an unexpected wind." He looked at Naya, who watched him with wide, frightened eyes, and a gentle yet firm smile appeared on his wrinkled lips. "Naya needs her grandfather warm, Kyle, and the whole village needs a fire that will not go out." Anya, her face pale, approached, her hands trembling as she adjusted a heavy reindeer hide coat on Akil's shoulders. "Be careful, Elder. The spirit of winter is treacherous." She did not try to dissuade him, for she knew Akil's determination was unshakable when the village was at stake. Ilara, joining Anya, offered Akil a small bone amulet carved in the shape of a raven. "May the spirits guide and protect you, Elder." Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. Akil accepted the amulet, clutching it in his palm. "The spirits have guided us once. They will guide us again." He turned to Kale. "Prepare the sleds and the strongest dogs. We will need strength and speed. And take with you the 3 most experienced hunters. We cannot afford mistakes." Kale nodded, apprehension still visible, but now mixed with renewed determination. "It shall be so, Elder." He hurried out to organize the expedition, the sound of his footsteps muffled by the snow. While Kyle prepared, Kyle knelt beside Naya, who now hugged him tightly, her small face hidden in the fur of his coat. "Don't worry, my ice flower. Grandpa will bring the warmth back to you, and when I return we'll have stories to tell by the fire." He kissed the top of her head, feeling the fragility of the life he strove so hard to protect. The departure into the storm was a grim spectacle. The wind whipped the snow into blinding whirlwinds, transforming the familiar landscape into a hostile white desert. Kyle, wrapped in furs, looked like an ancient, almost mystical figure, defying the element's fury. Kale and the three hunters followed him closely, their faces covered by fur masks, their eyes attentive to every movement of the elder. The dogs, accustomed to the cold, pulled the sleds with contained energy, their barks muffled by the blizzard. Anya and the other women watched from the cabin entrances, their hearts heavy. Naya, in Anya's arms, stretched out her small hand in a last, silent farewell. With each step, Akil felt the ice crunch under his boots, the wind cutting his exposed skin. Despite layers of clothing, he remembered the lessons of his ancestors, reading wind patterns, feeling changes in the snow, trusting the deepest instincts. The birch forest, where the densest and driest wood could be found, was a treacherous labyrinth under the blizzard. The journey was a battle of endurance. Visibility was almost nil, and the sound of the wind was their only companion. Akil, however, moved with a certainty that surprised the young hunters. He seemed to feel the way, guided by an ancestral memory etched in his bones. They passed by rock formations Akil had known since childhood, by trees he had watched grow. Each landmark was a reminder of his unbreakable connection to that land. The cold was excruciating, but Akil's determination was an internal fire that propelled him. He knew the village's fate depended on every step, every decision. Yakutia, in its brutal beauty, demanded respect and resilience. Akil, the ancient hunter, was ready to pay the price. He felt a pang of exhaustion, but the image of Naya, her smile, her hope, spurred him on. The wood was not just firewood, it was the promise of a future, the warmth that would keep life pulsating in the heart of the village. The wood was not just firewood, it was the promise of a future, the warmth that would keep life pulsating in the heart of the village. Akil felt every fiber of his body protest, but Naya's image spurred him on. The wind howled like an angry spirit, whipping the snow into blinding whirlwinds that transformed the landscape into a white desert. The ice crunched under his boots, the cold cut his skin. He remembered the ancestral lessons, reading the wind, feeling the snow, trusting deep instincts. The journey to the birches was a silent battle. After hours, Akil raised his hand. The robust trunks were ahead, barely visible. Kyle and the hunters, their hands numb, felled the trees under Akil's firm guidance. Every blow was an act of faith. The elder, with inspiring precision, taught them how to cut and carry wisely. The task was exhausting, but the sight of the full sleds rekindled hope. The sun was setting, painting the sky gray and purple. The temperature dropped, announcing the coldest and most dangerous night. Akil felt the urgency. It's time to go back. The spirits gave us the wood. We need to take it home. The return journey promised to be treacherous. The blizzard intensified. The wind roared. The snow was an impenetrable wall. Visibility dropped to zero. The path became a blur. Kyle, leading a sled, stumbled on an ice formation and fell, dragging himself out of the dog's path. A cry of pain was muffled by the wind's howl. Akil, right behind, saw the scene with a heavy heart. "Kyle!" he shouted, but his voice barely reached him. The other hunters, struggling to stay on course, he barely noticed. Akil ran to Kale, his bones protesting. The young man was pale, his hand on his ankle, the cold stealing his consciousness. "Get up, my son. We cannot stop." Akil tried to pull him, but Kyle was heavy, and the elder's exhaustion was palpable. If Kyle succumbed to the cold, everyone would be in danger. With determination that defied his 94 years, Akil bent down, took Kyle by the arms, and with superhuman effort lifted him, almost dragging him to the sled. His muscles screamed in pain, but Naya's image was a fire stronger than the cold. "We cannot get lost," Akil murmured. The darkness was total. The storm mocked them. The dogs, exhausted, struggled in the snow. Akil closed his eyes, concentrating. He couldn't see, but he could feel the land. He felt the subtle incline, the pattern of the chaotic wind. He remembered his grandfather's stories. Yakutia spoke to those who listened with their hearts. Akil opened his eyes, a new light in them. "To the left, follow me." His voice, full of authority, cut through the howl. He couldn't see, but he was guided by a deep ancestral connection. Kyle, semi-conscious, felt the strength that seemed to come from Yakutia itself. The village depended on every step of the elder, on his wisdom. Akil, his hatchet serving as support, advanced, each step a silent prayer against winter's fury. His eyes, though unable to see the trail, were fixed on an internal vision, a map etched into his soul by almost a century of experience. He felt the slight incline of the terrain, the murmur of the wind that to others was just chaos, but to him, a melody of direction and purpose. "Stay close." His hoarse voice barely overcame the howl. Kyle, leaning on the sled, felt his body tremble with cold and pain. But Kyle's determination was a warmth that kept him from giving in. He saw the elder, a small but unbreakable figure, defying the storm with a faith that seemed to move mountains of snow. The other exhausted hunters followed Kyle blindly, trusting his ancestral wisdom. The raven amulet, clutched in Kyle's wrinkled hand, seemed to radiate a subtle energy, a reminder of the mystical alliance that had saved the village. With every meter, the forest seemed to conspire to disorient them, but Kyle persisted, his instincts sharper than any compass. Hours dragged on, each minute an eternity of cold and effort. Kyle, his consciousness flickering, felt Akil's hand on his shoulder, a firm pressure. "We're almost there, my son. Smell the smoke. It's the smell of home." Kyle forced his eyes open, and for an instant through the curtain of snow, he swore he saw a flickering light. Hope, almost frozen before, rekindled in his chest. The dogs, sensing the proximity of home, redoubled their efforts, pulling the sleds laden with precious firewood. The sound of their barks, once muffled, now seemed a hymn of victory. Finally, the village palisades emerged from the blizzard, ghosts of wood and ice. A cry of relief echoed from the cabins. Anya and Ilara, with Naya nestled between them, ran to the entrance, their faces marked by anxiety and now illuminated by joy. Naya, seeing Akil, broke free from Anya's arms and ran, her small steps quick in the snow. Akil knelt, opening his arms, and hugged her with all the strength he had left. "Grandpa!" she exclaimed, her small face wet with tears and snow. "You're back!" The entire village mobilized. The firewood was quickly unloaded. The fires rekindled with renewed vigor and brightness. Warmth spread, driving out the cold and darkness. Kyle was taken to his cabin, where Anya and Ilara cared for his ankle with herbs and warm cloths, their gestures full of affection and gratitude. Akil, sitting near the communal bonfire, watched the scene, deep exhaustion in his bones, but a serene peace in his heart. Smoke rose in spirals to the sky, a silent offering to the spirits of the ravens and Yakutia. That night, the village not only warmed physically, but also spiritually. The stories of Akil's journey and the hunters were told and retold, each detail amplified by emotion. Kyle, his ankle bandaged, smiled, the pain lessened by the feeling of duty fulfilled and by his admiration for Akil. "Elder Akil," he said, his voice still weak, "your wisdom saved us. I saw it. You felt the way." Akil merely nodded, his eyes fixed on the flames. "Yakutia speaks to us, Kyle. One just needs to know how to listen. Naya, nestled beside her grandfather, fell asleep with a smile on her lips, dreaming of ravens and warm bonfires. The storm still howled outside, but within the palisades, the village was safe, united, and stronger than ever. The cold of Yakutia was relentless, but the flame of human resilience, fueled by faith and connection, was even more powerful. Akil knew that other challenges would come, but now they had the certainty that they could face them together. The resolution was not the end of dangers, but the reaffirmation that the village's spirit was unbreakable. They had proven, once again, that they were the children of winter, and that their home, in the icy heart of Yakutia, was a place of strength, love, and hope. The morning that followed the storm was one of icy, yet clear, clarity. The wind had calmed, leaving behind mountains of freshly fallen snow that glittered under a pale, almost shy sun. The village palisades, once obscured by the white fury, now stood tall, solid and proud, silent witnesses to yet another victory over the relentless winter. Akil, waking in his cabin, felt the warmth of the newly fed fire on his wrinkled skin. Tiredness still weighed in his bones, but it was a good tiredness, that of one who had fulfilled his duty. He watched Naya, still asleep in her fur bed, a gentle smile on her lips. The girl, who had known the terror of the tigers and the anxiety of the storm, now slept with the peace of one who feels safe. In the communal cabin, the buzz was different. There was no longer the silent tension, but voices full of plans and laughter. Kyle, though his ankle was bandaged, sat near the fire, his expression of pain replaced by one of gratitude and respect, as he listened to the women speak of Akil's courage. Anya and Ilara cared for him with maternal affection, and their eyes met Akil's, conveying deep admiration. The firewood they had brought burned with a golden glow, warming not only the body but the soul of the community. Days turned into weeks, and Akil's village not only recovered but flourished. The stories of the tiger horde and the raven's intervention, of Akil's journey for firewood and his wisdom amidst the blizzard, became living legends, told and retold around the bonfires. Naya, growing up under the watchful eye of her grandfather and the entire village, absorbed every word, every gesture. She was no longer the frightened girl, but a curious and resilient child who saw in her grandfather not just a protector, but a guide, a link to the ancestral strength of her people. Akil, in turn, felt his purpose being fulfilled. He spent long hours with Kyle, teaching him the secrets of hunting and survival, not just the techniques, but the philosophy of respect for nature and the importance of unity. Kyle, with his new authority, led the young men with a wisdom that seemed to have aged prematurely, but which was tempered by the energy of youth. The women, led by Anya and Ilara, established a system of mutual support that ensured no one was left behind, that every elder was cared for, and every child nourished. The village had learned that true strength lay not just in confronting visible danger, but in cultivating hope, solidarity, and unwavering faith in one another. The ravens, once omens of death, were now symbols of protection and the surprising alliance between man and the wild spirit of Yakutia. Small raven totems adorned the cabins, reminding everyone that nature, in its grandeur, could be both adversary and ally. Akil, sitting in his cabin, watching Naya play with a small wooden raven he had carved himself, felt a deep peace. He knew that Yakutia would continue to present its challenges, its harsh winters, and its wild surprises. But now, the village was ready. They had found not only the resilience to survive, but the wisdom to prosper. Akil's legacy was not just that of a hunter, but of an elder who had rekindled the flame of hope in a people, showing that even in the icy depths, the warmth of love and unity could melt any despair. Life in Yakutia continued, an eternal testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. Life in Yakutia continued, an eternal testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. And as the years passed, this strength rooted itself even deeper in the village, transforming it into a beacon of resilience. Akil, though his steps grew slower and his voice softer, remained the pulsating heart of the community. His presence was a constant reminder that courage knows no age, and that ancestral wisdom was an invaluable treasure. He spent his sunny afternoons sitting at the entrance of his cabin, watching Naya grow. Naya, now a young woman with the sparkle of snow in her eyes and the vibrancy of the tundra in her soul, carried within her the essence of the stories she heard. The legends of the 1300 tigers, of the ravens that descended from the sky, and of her grandfather's journey for firewood were not just tales. They were the foundation of her identity. She had learned to read nature's signs with Akil's same keen insight, to feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and to respect every creature, great or small. Her laughter echoed through the palisades, a sound of pure joy and freedom, and her gestures were full of a compassion that touched everyone. Kyle, who had become a strong and respected leader, often sat beside Akil, seeking advice and sharing the village's concerns. His ankle had healed completely, but the scar was a constant reminder of the lesson of humility and the elder's unwavering strength. He guided the hunters with Akil's same determination, but with a touch of modernity, integrating new techniques without ever forgetting traditions. The harmony between experience and youth was the key to the village's prosperity. Anya and Ilara, the guardians of home and community, ensured that the spirit of unity and mutual support never waned. Their bonds, forged in adversity, were now unbreakable. They organized harvests, cared for the sick, and wove stories into songs that were sung by the children, ensuring that Akil's legacy and the memory of the events that united them would be passed down from generation to generation. The village was not just a cluster of cabins, it was an extended family where everyone found their place and purpose. The ravens, faithful to their mystical promise, continued to fly over the village, their cause no longer an omen of danger, but a familiar and comforting sound, a reminder of the unusual alliance that had saved everyone. They were the silent guardians, the links between the human world and the wild spirit of Yakutia. Akil, seeing them, smiled, his wrinkled eyes shining with deep satisfaction. He had fulfilled his part, not just protecting his family, but rekindling the flame of hope in an entire community. Yakutia, with its harsh winters and short summers, continued to be a constant challenge, but Akil's village had learned that the greatest treasures were not found in the most abundant hunt or the most resistant wood, but in inner strength, in the ability to rise after every fall, to find warmth in unity and light in darkness. They had discovered that true wealth lay in human connection, in compassion, and in the unwavering faith that together they could overcome any obstacle nature presented them. Naya, feeling Akil's gaze upon her, approached and held her grandfather's wrinkled hand. "Grandpa," she said, her voice soft, "you taught us that we are stronger than the cold." Akil squeezed her hand, a gesture of love and pride. "We are the children of winter, my ice flower, and winter taught us to flourish." His gaze drifted to the snowy horizon, where the sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Life in Yakutia was a song of resilience, sung by those who dared to dream and love, even in the icy depths of the world. And that song would echo for many generations, an eternal and vibrant testament to the unbreakable human spirit.